G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the YouTube channel. How are we all doing on this lovely afternoon? Mate, I tells you what, I've been enjoying the weather lately. It's been nice and sunny, and it's not too hot today, so I'm happy about that. Except for people not knowing how to bloody drive. Hey. But I thought I'd get into an interesting topic that's pretty relevant for a lot of riders, and that is the topic of torque versus horsepower. Now, typically a lot of the higher horsepower bikes have a decent amount of torque in them anyway, but not as much as some of the low down torquey cruiser boys. Now, torque is one of those things that you don't always need stupid amounts of, otherwise everyone would ride a Rocket 3, alright? But torque is a feeling, horsepower is an experience, is the best way I can explain this to you, alright? And I mean that literally because, look, I've ridden an R1, I've ridden an MT-09, an MT-10, and I've ridden the Harley recently. So I've experienced all ranges of things on the spectrum, and I've ridden obviously the Rebel, and I've ridden a lot of learner bikes as well. So I know a little bit more on the lower down torque, the mid-range torque, and the high power torque and horsepower, etc, etc. Alright? Now, torque does not equal faster bike, but in most cases it's good for the legal sense of things. So that's why I reckon a lot of the best street bikes are your high torquey naked bikes, okay? Because you get to twist your throttle, you feel yourself getting yanked forward, but you still have that horsepower to sort of go fast as well, you know what I mean? It's not just all sent to oblivion, whereas high horsepower bikes typically don't produce their torque until higher in the rev range, and you're not really feeling that power kick in until you're doing God knows what speed compared to the speed limit. Like the R1 hits its peak torque at 11,500 RPM, okay? You're not going to be hitting 11,500 RPM until you're at like 120 kilometers an hour. So, look, you're definitely not hitting peak power anytime soon. This is an annoying scenario to be stuck in, isn't it? Jesu. I could have snuck around that bus, but it's alright. So my Rebel produces a lot of its horsepower at the top end, but it's not a very fast bike. It's got 47.5 horsepower, like 52 newton meters of torque, something along those lines. The Harley produces all of its torque at 3,000 RPM, and it's got 162 newton meters of torque. Now, a good little comparison is looking into your naked bikes. The new Street Fighter only makes 120 horsepower, so it's about 30-ish more than the Harley, almost, and it makes all of its torque down at the 120, it makes 120 newton meters of torque, some stupid thing, probably not that much, probably like 90, or I don't know, I don't remember the torque figure numbers, forgive me, but it makes all that power down at 3,000 RPM, which is what I meant to say, and that, for a naked bike, is outrageous, because I know that bike keeps pulling. Now, I know at the top end that new V-twin engine from Ducati isn't as good, but for riding like I'm doing now, you want torque, because torque is more fun, torque is more usable. Okay, now, when I was on the Harley, when I twist that throttle, every stretch of the imagination, every gear, it always had pull, whereas my bike, if I start putting it in too high of a gear and start accelerating, guess what, boy? My bike don't move. Now, one good way to look at the bike's power and torque and all that is, ready? Stupidly high torque down low means you spin the wheel when you accelerate. Really high horsepower means you lift the wheel when you accelerate. Does that make sense? And a good naked bike means you typically lift the wheel in a lot of gears while you accelerate. Heavy cruiser, lots of torque, spin wheel. Light bike, heavy torque, lift wheel. High horsepower bike means go fast, lift wheel later. And too acceleration too quickly means loop bike. So look, a lot of bikes with high horsepower are great fun to ride. They're definitely much more maneuverable a lot of the time. They're a lot more fun in the twisties, and that's more so what they're designed for, because that's where your race bike is. So they make all their power either at the high mids to the high revs, whereas the high torque bikes typically make their power low down. Not always, but typically. So they're usually made for that lower back style running. But much like riding a 600cc bike, sure, they're just as fun in the street, but look, you're not accelerating that fast until you start hitting that power band, which, I'm sorry, you don't really hit it till you're up at like 80 k's in first gear or something, so you're still leaving a lot of power behind, or torque behind, sorry, because of those cylinders. And remember, the bigger the cylinders, the more the torque is. That's right, there's no replacement for displacement. Yeah. But, dude, I thoroughly enjoy a bike with good torque, because a good amount of torque means that you feel the bike. And I am more, personally, I like a bike you feel the power on, as opposed to needing to work to the power. Now, that's mainly because, well, for one, I ride it for YouTube a lot of the time, and for YouTube in Australia, you really have to follow the law, and there's nothing wrong with that. And even in my spare time, if I'm doing the twisties, I like to come out of the twisties fast, all right? High horsepower means you get there fast. Good torque means you leave the corners fast, yeah? Like I said, same thing, I'm doing this. I want to feel that bike yanking me away, baby. Now, for a CBR 500 engine that this thing has, I would much rather have the more torquey engines. They're like, just the way you watch the acceleration then, all right? I was in second gear, and you really feel and that's more like what your horsepower tuned engines are. Now, I know they say this engine was tuned more for torque than for horsepower, but look, it's still a sportier engine, therefore it still produces power like a sportier engine. And in fact, my little bike, which is lower on the spectrum of power and torque than the other ones... Oh, really? I can't turn left here? That's a shame. I'm going to move over to the side there, so if anyone behind me wants to. Oh, now I can. What a strange set of rules. But look, same thing at this set of lights. I'm going to start off in first, but then I'm going to quickly stick... Oh, we're getting old Jenna here. Quickly shift to second, and you'll... Oh, chicken smells nice. And you'll quickly see the horsepower problem, what I'm talking about, versus torque. Because this bike, she lacking a bit of torque, okay? So you'll see. 3, 2, 1. All right, look. First, straight in a second, and then... You see, you can hear it in the revs how it builds and builds and builds. Much like a sports bike, that's how they do it, and then their torque is at that higher rev. Whereas your torquey engines, like even like your FTR 1200's a lot of torque, it's a big engine. You will twist your throttle and immediately feel it yanking you forward, all right? So I personally think that for a street motorcycle, you more want that than the alternative, okay? Because if you're not tracking your motorcycle and you're not breaking the law, then I would say probably 90% of the time you're going to want a bike with torque as opposed to a stupid high horsepower. Now, some of the engines do produce good torque, like your V4s produce a good amount of torque. That's just the joys of a V-shaped engine. Your inline 3s can make a good amount of torque, but your twins are the best for torque, baby. Big cylinders, big punchy. And there's nothing wrong with wanting a higher horsepower bike, all right? Don't think I'm saying it's better to have one than the other. It's better for street usage, yes, but it doesn't make the bike better itself. So, like, the best bikes, my friend, there's not... What are you waiting for? The best bikes are clearly the sports bikes with the highest horsepower, right? That's just... They're usually made the best. But there's a reason cruisers are better choices for your long distance traveling. Now, you can do it on a sports bike. I've heard of people doing it, and I respect them, bloody madmen. But I'm telling you, you don't need it. But for me, and if you're just doing a lot of street riding and you want to have a bit of fun here and there, I would recommend you get yourself a little mid-range bike with a good amount of torque and good amount of horsepower. You don't need the best of the best, because after riding an R1, the MT-10's a little bit of the same thing. Although it's fun, there's no real need to leave first gear in a lot of those bikes, which is a damn shame, because look, if you're only riding around in first gear on a bike you paid 40, 50 grand for, sometimes 30, well then you basically wasted your money for half the bike you can't even use. And I don't know about you, but I pay for the damn bike. I want to use the damn bike. The Rebel 500 is even like, look, oh, thank you. Oi, don't start moving yet, Larlin. Jesus. The Rebel 500 can break every speed law in the country. So I'm not saying you don't need to have some power, because look, if we're going by that argument, you should just have a 125 and then call it a day, because they can hit the speed limits everywhere. So don't think I'm that much of a bloody Nancy when it comes to power on the road. I like power, don't get me wrong. I came from a family of V8s and muscle, so I like a little bit of horsepower and torque. All I'm saying is, if you want the most fun for your street bike, I reckon a mid-sized bike with a great amount of torque is the way to go. If you're just purely cruising, well then guess what? The bigger the better, isn't it, baby? You want all that torque you can get. You can have a lot of fun with the 1200, so if you want a Sportster or a 48, it's my favourite. i883 has still got a good amount of torque. It's not fast by any means, but sometimes the bike is more about the feeling. And remember, you buy a bike with your ass, not with specs on a screen, okay? And if that doesn't make sense to you, you haven't sat on enough bikes and you haven't ridden enough. Because if you're riding a lot, the bike's got to feel good under your ass and whatnot. And I assure you, once you make that connection in your brain, your bike changing things will change a little bit. Because look, if you're sitting on the bike and it feels good, and you rev it and it feels better, well, you're just not going to leave unsatisfied, are you? But look, you get a high power bike, you're going to love it, but you're always going to feel like you're missing something, all right? Because you're never quite punching it hard enough, all right? You get something too small. Sometimes you might feel like you've not got enough power, but a mid-range bike, you will always do what you want. You will have plenty of power, plenty of speed. It'll be fast enough for the road. A lot of the times those mid-range bikes hit the 100 kilometer, 60 mile an hour mark at the same speed as like your leader bikes anyway. But I assure you, getting a mid-range bike, you'll never be unsatisfied, much like your girlfriend not after a night of drinking and then she comes home to you. Anyway, I kid. But dude, mid-range bikes are definitely underrated by a lot of people because, oh, you got the baby one. Like when people get the Panigale V2. Oh, you got the baby Panigale. My brother in Christ, that thing still hits 280 kilometers an hour. But guess what? It doesn't scramble my eggs and toast them at the same time, and it has less fuel usage. So why would I bother? I heard that bloody V4 blisters your legs from how hot it is. That's ridiculous. Whereas your little mid-range bikes, even though it's nearly 1,000 cc's anyway, a lot of torque, good delivery, more punchy, especially those new engines. Cruisers as well, bigger engines is the better. No replacement for displacement and such. But I'm telling you, man, sometimes all you want is, ooh, is that a highway patrol? Let's not go that way. I know they've pulled someone over, but I still don't trust them. Oh, I love it still. I love it still. I love it still. But yeah, look, you get yourself a nice mid-range bike, you'll never be disappointed. You'll always be happy. Sometimes you might, like, look, if you're tracking the bloody thing, you might find the urge to want more. You might find that you just want more power if you're squidding it everywhere. But under realistic usage, the mid-range is the way to go, because, look, torque is great. And I think a torquier bike is a more playful bike for, like, the sense you can do and get away with. The downside is a high torquey bike likes to pop wheelies, and Australia doesn't fucking like doing anything when it comes to wheelies. If you break traction and pop a little bit of a burnout, even by accident, and I'm telling you this from, there was a news report a little while ago, there was a guy in a front wheel drive car, okay, like a little Kia Cerato. He's a P-plater, so that's, you do your learners for a year, like until you're 18, and then you can get your P-plates if you're not from Australia, yeah? And you're stuck on these P-plates for, I think it's 3 or 4 years, something along those lines. Now, he was taking a corner with this little Kia Cerato, and he accelerated and he spun the tyres like that much. It wasn't like a bloody burnout. It was literally just that was it. And guess what? They fined him for hooning because he spun the tyres. So if you're living in Australia and you're a vehicle enthusiast, unfortunately the police do nothing but screw you over at every step of the way. P-platers especially. I got hit from someone who ran a red light and I had to pay the fine because I was apparently turning in front of oncoming traffic. That's the P-plater rules. And also, if you're a P-plater or a car enthusiast, you can get defected for having a stock car. That's how much the police love you here. But without further ado, like I'm saying, enjoy a torquier bike. I think it's more fun. Because when you twist the throttle and you get that little bit of fun, it's going to hit you more in the stomach as opposed to the horsepower, which is like... You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with horsepower, but for me, I want to hit that punch in the stomach every time. We're going to go this way. Because after riding multiple bikes with all different kinds of power figures, I can assure you my favorite demographic. I do like the high horsepower ones, but when I'm riding around just at normal speeds that aren't twisty sections all the time, and even with a bit of twisty sections, a high torque is way more fun 100% of the time. So without further ado, ladies and gents, this is all I have time for. I do hope you take it easy, keep it cheesy, ride safe, be safe, and always peace. Bye.